Hey guys, welcome to the first science lesson of the week. You have two lessons this week. This is one's a little bit shorter, maybe 30, 45 minutes. Definitely remember that there is a question doc here. If you have a question, you can always email our teacher, but please write it on this document. That way your teachers know that some students have questions, we can respond, and other people can see the same questions. Please make sure anytime you see a white background, it's a place we want you to be typing something. That means on a vocab slide, there's a little white box we want you to be writing in there. It helps you think about the work. And please turn these in when you are finished. That way your teachers know they're done. They can check you off. They can give you some comments, things like that. Here's our first unit. The first lesson in this new unit of an evidence for evolution. So this is more of an introductory lesson. Our do now says, which of the following best describes what scientists mean when we say evolution? What does that word mean? Is it another term for natural selection? Is it an explanation for how life started? An explanation of how life changed after it started? Or is it both? Is it how life started and then how it changed? Maybe you don't know. That's fine. This is the first lesson. You're not supposed to necessarily know everything. Pause the video. Choose the best answer that you think makes the most sense. If you're wrong, great. You learned something and then you'll never forget. Add into this little box here why you think you chose that. It helps you kind of think it through. Pause it now, answer that, and then we'll keep going. Okay, I'm hoping that you did your do now. Now we're looking at the agenda. I have a scientist of the day for you. We have a look at learning targets and vocabulary. You got to take a few slides to kind of get some initial ideas down. Again, this is a brand new unit. We're going to be learning a lot. I kind of want to know what you already know. I want you to think about what you already know. Once you know what you already know, you have the schema. It's easy to stick the new information into what you already know. And so we have a couple resources that go broadly over a lot of the stuff we're going to learn in depth. So the next lesson and the next week and then the week after, we're going to go into a lot more depth on specific types of evidence for evolution. These resources that we'll get to at the end kind of go over everything, but really surface level. Our scientist of the day is Dr. Timnit Gebru. She's an Ethiopian computer scientist. She works in the US now. She works at Google, which is really cool. And you can look her up. There's a lot of information about her. She's done TED Talks and cool things like that. Our new unit. We're going to observe and analyze different types of evidence that supports the theory of evolution. There's kind of breaking up over three pieces of evidence. There's actually a lot more, but this unit, our standards, talk about three. So this week we're going to talk about fossils, which is awesome. That's what the next lesson is about. Next week we're going to start looking at comparative anatomy. That means comparing like wings and hands of different animals. And then we'll look at embryos in 2 weeks. Pause this, or we'll look through the whole video, watch the whole video, and then come back and answer each piece. But I want to know, what are you most excited to learn about and why? Is it fossils? Is it comparative anatomy? Is it embryos? Is it something else about evolution that you're interested in? Tell me about it. I'll say more about this. So up until now, we've talked about how mutations can change. It can give different traits. You change the protein, which changes you change the gene, which changes the protein, which changes the trait. Then we talk about how natural selection, some of those traits might be really helpful. Maybe it makes the polar bear's fur thicker, which makes it more likely to survive. And so you adapt these changes. And so you have adaptations, new traits that become normal. So we're already looked at how living things can change. So right now we're going to look at evidence for that this has actually been happening for billions of years, like 3.5 billion years, that long as life has been around on Earth. It has been slowly changing. So our learning target today is being able to describe the theory of evolution and identify the types of evidence that support it. So I want you to be able to be like, hey, you know what evolution is, and be able to define it, and then what evidence that makes scientists know that it's true. So evolution, what is it? This kind of answers your do now. Evolution is the idea that life slowly changes over time. That anything alive today, and all the species alive today, that's all animals, all plants, you, you have descended from older species. So that means we did not descend, species today did not descend from each other. Often I hear like, oh, humans came from monkeys. Well, that's not true because monkeys are alive today. Well, you could say something else, and we'll talk about that in a second. So scientists agree that life probably only began one time and then has been slowly changing ever since. This means that all living things are related and we can all trace our ancestry back to the first living thing 3.5 billion years ago. And you can kind of see that on something like this, the tree of life. This is kind of a really big idea and it kind of hurts your brain when you're first thinking about it, but it's actually really cool. And the more we learn about evolution, I want you to kind of always go back to this idea like, whoa, we're all related to everything. Like you are literally related to trees. It's like really far back that you're related, but you're related. That's cool. Going to the next slide here. We're looking at evidence, and we're talking about evidence for evolution. So evolution is this idea we just talked about. Evidence is any fact or information that supports a claim, inference, hypothesis, or theory. It's like observations that you use to make an inference, which we've worked out a lot on this year. So I have a little example here. So someone broke into a museum and stole a famous painting. Being the world's greatest detective, what kind of evidence would you want to find? What evidence are you going to be looking for to solve this case? This gets you just thinking about evidence that way. So go ahead and fill that in. That should be kind of fun. Okay, so another important new vocabulary word, so important, is this idea of a common ancestor, which is the most recent species from which two other species evolved. Okay, so I like to think about this as just like in your family. So you are most closely related to all of your siblings, those are your brothers and sisters. Your most recent common ancestors with your brother and your sister is your parents. You go, hey, how are we related? Oh, well, we have the same mom. Oh, okay, there you go. But you and your cousin have a recent common ancestor. You and your cousins don't have the same parents, but you do have a very common or very recent common ancestor. Who is that? Fill that in here, actually. Fill that in. Who is your most recent common ancestor? And in terms of species alive today, our most closely related species alive today are chimpanzees. And our most recent common ancestor was 6 or 7 million years ago. Some people say 6, some say 7, depends. There's a little bit of a range that we're not sure. So that means if you went in a time machine 6 million years ago, you could like meet a creature and be like, oh, hi. You wouldn't really recognize it, some kind of ape-like creature, but that creature would be the great whatever grandparent, go back how many greats for 6 million years, of every human and chimpanzee alive today. Again, that kind of makes your brain hurt. Oh my gosh. So there was like an animal 6 million years ago that is my great whatever grandparent and is related to every chimpanzee and human alive today. So we did not come from chimpanzees. We're like cousins of chimpanzees. We're alive now. You wouldn't say that you descended from your cousin. You have a common ancestor who, again, what do you call that common ancestor? What are you going to write in here? Remember that we learned this before, but a species is a group of organisms that are very closely related. And they're able to reproduce to make fertile offspring in nature. So there's cats. Actually, this is true. And dogs. These are all the same species. Every dog is the same species, whether it's huge or tiny. They're actually so closely related that we consider them the same species, which is really cool. Okay, so what you're going to do in these next slides is you're going to observe the images. You're going to infer how they might support the theory of evolution, everything that I've talked to up until now. And you're going to fill in these little boxes. What do you see? What questions do you have? And how might they provide evidence? There's some things that you might not know, and that's okay. But let me do the first one for you. Okay, so I'm looking at these pictures, and I'm like, this is like an imprint of skeletons. Looks like in rock. This looks like a skeleton, right? I don't know this animal. This is some kind of like crocodile, alligator, lizard thing, but I don't. Yeah, that's weird. So okay, I'm gonna write that. I observe a skeleton and an imprint of a man, I can't type when you guys are watching me. Of a skeleton. They don't look like any animal I know about alive today. Okay, so what are these animals? How did the skeleton get imprinted in the rock. Does this animal relate to any, or probably is this, but it's okay, animals alive today? So I think this might provide evidence for evolution because this is an extinct animal, maybe related to lizards or crocodiles alive today. I don't know. That's my guess. That's just an inference based on what I'm observing. And see, that didn't take me that long. I mean, I'm cheating. I'm a teacher. I've learned these things before. And so I want you guys to do the same thing. Maybe you won't come to the same conclusions I do, but you're thinking about it. And again, you're just kind of thinking, what do you already know? What do you already think? And then everything we learn is easier to learn because you can just stick it into there what you already, either you're replacing it, oh, I thought this, but now I realize it's this. Or it's like, oh, yeah, I already knew that. That's cool. Okay. And you make it hard in your brain that you know it's real. So here are the different pictures. Whoa, these are embryos. That's weird. Okay. Here's looks like there's a timeline here. This looks like a horse. These look like maybe kind of look like horses. Interesting. I gotta look more at that. Ooh, this is a phylogenetic tree. I see sharks, fishes, amphibians, hair. Interesting. Okay. This looks like DNA. Interesting. Okay. Ooh, this is a human, a cat, a whale, and a bat. These looks like an arm of each of them, and they're color coded. I might want to look carefully at that. This is a person standing in front of some rocks. There's a bunch of layers in these rocks. Okay, interesting. So for each of these, I want you to take a couple minutes, write what you observe. Any questions? You don't have to fill out all of them. Come up with 2 or 3 questions. And can you guess how this might be related to evidence for evolution? On this last slide here, it's not the last slide, but on this slide, there's 2 things. There's a video and a slideshow. If you click on this is actually a different link than this, and these will link to them too. This should link to your video, and this should link to the slideshow. Both of these do a good job of talking about everything that we're going to learn about for the next 3 weeks. Again, these are kind of just briefly talk about little things, and we're going to go into a lot of depth. We're going to talk a lot about each different type of evidence for evolution and kind of compare things. But for now, get these, watch the video, look at the slides. That way you have a little bit of a background if you don't have one already. And then after you watch the video and or look at the slides, just give me a couple things that you learned. Be like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. And write these in here so I can see that you've read them. I can see that you're thinking about it. There's a quick exit ticket. If you click on here, you'll see that it's not graded. We are going to look at what you wrote. We're interested in what you guys are thinking. But fill it out. That's how we know you're done. Turn in these slides. And hey, nice work getting the first lesson done. That is it. If you haven't registered for classes for next year, don't forget to do that. Go on your Google Classroom, on your advisor. Your advisory teacher should have put that up there. If not, email me. I'll send you the link. It's important that you get signed up for your classes next year. That's it. If you guys have any questions, email your teacher, stick it in the question doc. And once you're done with this, you can start the next one. Thanks, guys.